Hello, it's John. Yeah, I'm going to talk about Mandalorian. I'll probably talk about The Witcher later too. Not in this one, but in another one, so I can pad my videos on the channel. So anyway, howdy. Actually, it'd be this. So yeah, just finished The Mandalorian, all 8 episodes. Well, I've been watching them as they've come out, and I just finished episode 8, the sort of season finale. Holy crap, what a satisfying show. I mean, there's a couple parts where it's like you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And then it kind of Taika Waititi directed the last episode, so it kind of had a lot. There were some things that kind of were reminiscent of Thor Ragnarok, not because it was blatantly like, oh, he ripped this off of Thor Ragnarok, but because it was the idea of, all right, what would be sort of like, holy crap, this is cool and this is kind of badass without it then being the sort of, hey, I've got the faux hawk duck butt and smell like Axe body spray and wear an affliction t-shirt and I'm badass and this is going to be badass because it's dark and twisty and bad and Batman's not a hero. He's just going to be a badass and hurt people. And Zack Snyder loves Frank Miller bad at bullshit. No, none of that bullshit. It was like, you know what would be cool? This big fucking gun. And you know what else would be cool? If Mandalorian takes it off of the thing, by the way, some spoilers, takes it off of the thing and just mows people down with it. You know what else would be awesome? A fucking flamethrower. And you know what else would be great after the flamethrower is like, holy crap, what are we going to do? Little Babby Izzle blows it back in the dude's face. Like, some of this is really satisfying. The redeemed IG unit has his Terminator 2 moment, including having lava involved. Um, Mandalorian gets his like this clan insignia, and the armor is saying now you're a clan of two, because the whole Mandalorian code now basically has Babby Izzle as a foundling, and a lot of the show is talking about the foundlings and taking care of him and all that. So now you're like a clan of two, and he's expected to, you know, uh, either of age, teach him or find his peoples and all that. Everyone's just like whatever, and the armorer is telling him a little bit like, yeah, we used to have this enemy of these sorcerers called Jedi, and he's like, wait a minute, so I got to take care of something and find his clan of enemy sorcerers? He's like, no, he's like your charge and stuff now. There's an opening part where there's this dialogue between the two scout troopers that grab Abby Izzle. That's hilarious. It's abusive in some ways to Babby Izzle, because he just kind of get a little smacked, but they kind of get what they deserve. But the dialogue is actually really funny. So it's nice that Jon Favreau was able to like, hey, I have Taika Waititi here, so I'm going to make sure I have some amusing dialogue. Um, find out the Mandalorian group kind of gets decimated, but the armorer is still there. But the armorer still has a badass moment where she defeats like I think it's like 6 stormtroopers with tools. So think that sort of Donnie Yen Irut Chimwe or Irut. Um, Chimway is not his name. Chirrut Imwe. There we go. Dyslexia. Fun. Thing where he beats the stormtroopers with a stick. It was almost a little like that, except more explodey armor, because she beat the crap out of him so bad. Ignore the shirt. It beat the crap out of him so bad, their armor broke. There's another joke about how bad stormtroopers' aim is. I mean, just the episode alone, the finale episode, episode 8 alone, was really satisfying. But it was a really satisfying way to wrap up the whole series. And what's nice, and I think one of the things that a lot of these streaming services, Netflix or even Hulu or now Disney Plus, can get into, is the same thing that made stuff from like HBO, when they really started making shows, like The Sopranos or something like that, even before Game of Thrones. Um, and to some extent Dexter, but I don't know the way that ended, if that could be said the same, because that was, bleh. The ending of Dexter was terrible. But I think a lot of these things up the game in a lot of ways, especially for series and shows, let alone for even maybe movies. And one of the things I'll say is I like it when that sort of like British pattern where the show might be maybe 3 seasons and there's 6 to 10 episodes per season, but it's a really satisfying, complete story, and it's really enjoyable and high quality, as opposed to just trying to make this crap go out for 22 to 26 episodes, and we're going to bleed this damn thing for as many, excuse me, decades even as we can. And that works for some things. Star Trek, like Next Generation especially, sort of set the tone. Was like, we're going to cut this off at 7 seasons. Deep Space Nine sort of upped the game up. It was like, all right, we'll still cut this off at 7 seasons, but there's a through line, overarching story arc to the show, and I think some of those things really were different, especially in terms of American television, because we didn't really have that. It was, we have this sitcom and it's gone on for 12 years and nothing ever changes except the kids get a little older and we gotta incorporate that, but whatever. Um, and even like more drama series, it's just, you get into that pattern, like if you watch like Pretty Little Liars or some of these CW shows, where if we had an endpoint in mind, if we actually had a story in mind, as opposed to here's some caricatures and we're just going to throw them in situations and it'll work itself out, then what you get with that scenario, the caricatures of people and things that work out, is we run out of things to do at some point. So what we have to do is really artificially perpetuate the drama. So now you get people for after 2 or 3 seasons, they've had these things that they've never talked about, and now at the time they're going to talk about them. And even idiots, even morons and shitty people at some point in time would talk about this thing. But they're like, no, I'm not going to talk about it. And that just perpetuates bullshit drama. And especially these teeny bopper shows or anything else like that, it's just melodrama bullshit. And then people go on and start doing like this is a real thing. I've seen people act like this, act like their lives are Pretty Little Liars or something, because they're just fomenting bullshit, false drama. And you get that if you don't have an actual point to the show. You have an actual story arc. You have, this is where I want to go. Things I set up in episode 1 will come out in the finale, and things will lead up as we go. So in episode 7 of Mandalorian, we have the opportunity to come in and episode 1 and 2 with him getting the kid and saving the kid, and 3 is saving him again, canning him over but bringing him back out. These things that were set up and his consequences for that are being called to account, and then people he met along the way of those intervening like 4 or 5 episodes, then, and the situations of those 4 or 5 episodes then had a purpose for him going, oh, I like you, you're going to be helpful, come and help me. You are going to come and help me too because I need you. So it ties all those things together, so it's not just, a progressive series of just one-offs or anything. It ties everything in, and it gives everything a point. And then, even stuff from the first episode brings in a point. So it was clearly a well thought out series, and a really well executed series. I saw something online that was talking about, thank you, Jon Favreau. You kind of introduced, opened up the MCU. This stuff from Mandalorian, like there's a few things that they gave him a lot of credit for, and part of me is sort of like, hey, he's got to make up for Swingers. I'm sorry, I hated Swingers. I know a lot of people are like, man, Swingers is this awesome cult movie and it's fun, and they quote stupid things from it. I'm sorry, Swingers was shit. It was douchebags being douchebags, and I just can't enjoy. I can't sit back and enjoy that. I'm sick to death of these shows or movies where people are just assholes and are assholes, and these are supposed to be things that we're supposed to be cool with. And I'm not. I hated Swingers. Admittedly, I watched it once, and it was years ago. I might have a different feel about it now if I watched it later and the intervening things would happen. But I hated Swingers. But I like the other stuff he's done. The Iron Man stuff. Not only was he funny in it as an actor, but I thought he was, the directing stuff was pretty good. Mandalorian is awesome. I really don't give a crap about live action remakes of Disney movies because I do like classic Disney movies. I admit it, that even without Marvel and Star Wars, I still would have pre-ordered Disney Plus. Not gonna lie, I like Disney movies. Um, so I still, but to me, it's and I understand that part of this could be seen as, well, obviously you're going to feel this way because the book that you've written and tried to get published for the past 4 years hasn't yet gotten a publisher or even a fucking agent. So yeah, you're going to say something like this. But honestly, and that is part of there is part of that in that too, I will admit, but part of it is how many millions of fucking cool stories from people of color, people LGBT plus, um, Latinx, African stories, Asian stories, not just treating Asian people as sort of like, well, we all can make fun of them because it doesn't matter now. And, people having songs talking about Ting Tong and King Kong, rhyming stupid stuff like it because, oh, Asians are just a whatever culture, we don't care. Um, Other stories from like indigenous populations all around the world, actually having, women being women instead of, hey, this badass woman, we're going to make her a badass. And you know how? We're basically going to make her a boy who can fight. That it's like there's so many other stories and so many other things and stuff like that that can be made that they're wasting, $1 billion in all these different movies just to make live action versions of shit that's already been out. I'm kind of tired of reboots, remakes, all that other stuff. Very few times have we needed a reboot. One example I'll give you is the Battlestar Galactica show from the 2000s with Edward James Olmos and Mary McDonnell, and Jamie Bamber and Trisha Helfer and Katie Sackhoff and all those people. That was awesome. That's one of the best shows I've ever seen. I love it. It didn't go on forever. It had its endpoint. If you watch the old Battlestar, which I did, and it sucked, you kind of know what the endpoint was going to be. They led up to it. They led up to it in a bunch of different ways. That was awesome. It had this clear-cut idea of a beginning and an end. Instead of some sort of Damon Lindelof bullshit where it's like, no, no, this will all make sense, and I'm just going to continually make this more and more bullshit convoluted, and then, oh crap, I don't know how to dig myself out of the hole, so I'll just throw something bullshit at it and make it sound like it's arty and spiritual and intelligent, when really I'm just a fucking hack. Lost. Or even going into things like Prometheus and shit. So, but Mandalorian doesn't do that. It had a clear cut, we're going to start off with this, and he's this sort of person, and then we're going to have this arc, and we're going to have a clear kind of way that this is going to end. We have enough uh, leave enough open for certain things to come back in. We have a drive for another season now. Him trying to find the baby Yizzle people of Yoda and Yaddle fame, and or potentially Jedi. And then you're going to have automatically conflict with Jedi. Cara, Gina Carano's character, does not go with him at the end and decides to stay on Navarro, which, interesting, Guns of Navarro. I just figured Guns of Navarone, Navarro, has a sort of southwestern sound to it. That's why I called it that. Decides to stay on there, and oh, because we cleaned up the town, then she's going to stay and keep it clean, sort of thing. It's like, I don't know how I feel about that. I guess she's just kind of wanted to plant after being the shock trooper and being kind of a badass, and now they went in and yeah, they cleaned up the banditos out of the town, and now she's going to stay and sheriff it or whatever, with Apollo Creed still being guild bounty hunter guy or whatever. But I don't know, a part of me would have been more satisfied if she kind of went with him. But I guess they did kind of set it up with the idea of you're a clan of two, which meant the Mandalorian and Baby Yizzle. Um, I'm not calling it Baby Yoda because it's not Baby Yoda, and I understand why it's called Baby Yoda, and I appreciate that. And I do still say Baby Yoda in some conversations because it makes things oh baby, it makes things easier. Got it. For my own purposes, for me, I refer to it as Baby Yizzle. Um, But I mean, I think part of it, and not even like a romance. It didn't even have to be like, oh, well, clearly this is going to be the love interest thing. Didn't even have to be that. Part of it is, I just thought she was really good on the show, and I thought the two of them complemented each other really well. The characters and the acting and everything like that. You got you saw bits and pieces of, Mandalorian as a young child, and his parents. Or you're assuming his parents you know, running away from obviously, separatist droids. And he's being held back this way, looking back and seeing all these people in this village being just murdered by these droids. So obviously he's going to have a fucking problem with droids. He's like, everyone's like, what's your problem with droids? He's just super, super antagonistic to droids. Well, yeah, he's super traumatized for it. And while the Mandalorian training when he was a kid might have been really good to give him, self-esteem and maybe even a purpose and a drive and might have been have a certain therapeutic aspect where it was like, now I'm not going to be a victim anymore. I could pretty much guarantee there wasn't a lot of psychoanalysis or trauma informed care or anything like that with it. It was like, all right, here's how you beat the shit out of like 8 people at one time with Mandalorian Krav Maga, and all right, here's some flamethrowers and some little whippy dart rope thingies, and here's a bunch of guns, and this thing will disintegrate people. Isn't that awesome? By the way, we're going to train you in jetpacks as a kid. By the way, he gets his fucking jetpack. How satisfying is that? It's like, all right, did you train in, was it Phoenix, whatever? The armorer asks him. He's like, yeah, as a kid. It's like, okay, you're going to need this jetpack, which he uses. And he uses pretty awesomely, by the way. He uses it to take down a TIE fighter. So the Giancarlo Esposito character is a Moff, and apparently had something to do with the cleansing of Mandalore. So once you find that out, and the Mandalorian basically takes him down in his TIE fighter, it's extra satisfying. Couple things, even with that, and of course you knew he wasn't going to be dead. I mean, how many times in Star Wars shows now? I mean, just Aura Singh alone from Clone Wars, and that was the thing with Quell, Nick Nolte's Ugnaught. I wasn't sure he was dead until they blatantly said it. Yes, unfortunately, he's dead, and I'm pretty sad about that because he was a cool character. Um, but yeah, unless you see the body, and unless it's confirmed, I'm not going to say he's dead. But he wasn't. And, the Jawas are immediately trying to salvage his TIE fighter. And he cuts his way out with fucking Darksaber. Which part of me is kind of like, how did you get that from Sabine? Because I would imagine, since it was Rebels, and, they showed at the end of Rebels, obviously, okay, well, they kind of made it clear that these people survived through Return of the Jedi, which is when this is taking place after Return of the Jedi. Sabine lives through that, but this guy has something that looks suspiciously like Darksaber. I know she gave it up and all this other stuff to didn't she give it to, was it Katie Sackhoff's character, which was what's her name's sister that Obi-Wan was macking on? I think she gave it to her for that, but it's like, oh, that means that this whole thing. So I mean, you can take a lot from Rebels and answer some and you make a lot of questions now. If this dude really has Darksaber, it even looks sort of animated as Darksaber did too. Made the sounds. This thing's got to be Darksaber. So that raises a ton of questions that can be opened up and be answered too. So now you have what the hell happened with the destruction of Mandalore, and how did this guy get Darksaber? Now we've got to find either Jedi and or Baby Izzle's Peoples's, and clearly we can leave stuff to come back, because then we get to see Carl Weathers and Gina Carano again, which you pretty much need to, especially Gina Carano's character. Cara, her thing was pretty cool. I really like that. So I mean, it had great character arcs for people. It had great redemption arcs, because then the IG unit that Quell, sorry, reformatted, has the thing where it is super badass through the whole thing. Makes a hole to get in and help rescue the three of them out of the bar that they were trapped in. They have, badass moment where they're clearing it out, but the Moff comes in, blows something up, messes up Mandalorian. Bad. Like, he's probably going to die. He's telling him, okay, go, protect the kid. I'm going to die this warrior's death. Let me do this. This is the way. And, the IG is like, let me save you. I'm going to remove your helmet and all this. He's like, no, the fuck you're not. No one living seen my face since I was a kid, and I took the code. He's like, I'm not living. And plus, he got this trauma of these the droids, destroying everything he knew and loved, and just watching them like murder people when he was young. So, he pulls off. It was like, I'm not alive. So, okay, the Moff pulls out. All right, Grief. This is what you were. You were used to be a magistrate. Now you're doing this. Kara, you were a shock trooper. This. And Mandalorian, here's your name. Mandalorian Hunter, here's your name. So they say his name, and then the IG takes off his helmet. Now I already know what Pablo Pascal looks like. But they show his face, and he gives him this back. The IG thing gives him this back to spray, because he got basically brain damage. They make a little central processing unit joke about that, and then they make a joke about that. It's a joke. So the droid, you almost expected Baby Izzle to help save him, but he got exhausted from blowing up the flamethrower dude. So so then when the IG is going to have his Terminator 2 moment of saving everybody by sacrificing himself, Mandalorian's pretty sad about it. He's like, don't be sad. He's like, I'm not sad. He's like, yeah, you are. I analyzed your voice. I'm a nurse droid now. That's what I do. So now you have this whole thing where this trauma that's been hinted at, and you really see, at the end, because they finish the flashback of him as a kid. So in 2 or 3 episodes, you get this flashback of the battle droids coming in there and killing all his people and blowing up his parents and all this. Then you have the thing open again, and you see a Mandalorian, say, come on out. And the kid comes out, and he sees Mandalorians actually descending from the sky with their jetpacks, clearing out the droids. So, yeah, this is going to be something that's going to be really important to him, because he's going to hate droids because he got traumatized by seeing these things just murder everyone he knows. And then this other faction of people come in and not only rescue him, but kill all the bad things. They make the bad things go away. So yeah, this is going to, like, it psychologically makes sense. So they finish that part of the arc, and then you do kind of give him some trauma-informed care because it's almost like immersion therapy. Sorry. So you had all this stuff that he had a problem with droids, and he's killing them all the time, and like know this and know that, and this droid was going to do this and blow him up. Now the droid saves him. And now he's like, no, don't die. You're part of our team now. You're part of our squad. It's almost like Mandalorian. You get that sort of orphan thing where it's you try and make your family wherever you go. So now with Quell, with Kara, even with Creef, I know what I want to say. I'm not going to say it. Carl Weathers, and now there's Droid with the Babby Izzle and everything. It's like he's trying to almost make again this clan, this family, which makes sense again, trauma, losing the family and everything. And now he's healed a certain amount of things. Okay, droids are all right. This one saved me. This one did everything he could to save the Babby, save me. When he didn't have to, he could have killed me. I was expecting him to do so, and he didn't. So you get some healing with that too. Um, so and yeah, you get this person who's a lone badass, who's used to being alone and everything, and now he's trying to build this family, and he wants people to come with him, which I think is really powerful too, because again, it's like, look, he's recognizing that he has certain limitations. He's recognizing that he's stronger in this sort of group of people that they've kind of built this family around. And he wants that. He kind of had that a little bit with the Mandalorians who were hiding, of which only the armor is left. And he kept trying to get her to come with them too. He asked like 2 or 3 times. She's like, no, I'm going to stay here and reclaim what I can. And then he was like, no, come with us, like a couple of times. And it wasn't like this desperation sort of thing, like begging. It was this recognition of, you're alone, you don't have to be. We're stronger and we're better together. Trying to build that connection and build that family, which I thought was really cool. So the whole show had, it had like Man with No Name thing. It had really good action. It had good story, good characters, good story arcs through the whole thing. In episode 6, he could have killed the people who set him up and were basically going to leave him just to get arrested or killed or something too. He didn't kill the group, but he did use some awesome little trickery to fuck over the main guy, fucked him over initially, and then the person they rescued too was sort of like to both of them, which was great. I respect the hell out of that. And but didn't kill the other people who were kind of, and I don't agree with, well, it was just the job. I don't agree with that whole thing where it was like, don't blame me for being an asshole. I'm just doing my job. That's borderline, I'm just following orders. Because you chose that job, you chose that life, and you're choosing whether or not you follow those orders. You are actively choosing this life where if you don't follow what they say, they're going to kill you. You made that decision. Now you're making the decision to follow that up when you don't need to. Fuck you, you're just doing your job. That's Nazi shit. No, you don't get to just say I'm just doing my job and that's supposed to be okay. But he spared them too, but blew the other people up. We had an awesome Seven Samurai episode, which was the one that brought in Kara, or Gina Carano's character. And like I've said in other things, I do love a good Seven Samurai episode when it's done well. Seven Samurai, one of my favorite movies. And a couple of like my favorite like martial arts like fight scenes, whatever. And it's not like the big battles with the people. It's like when the one grumpy, really stern guy was fighting the guy first with the stick, and then the guy gets all pissed off, and then they draw the blades. There's basically 2 moves in the entire fight. I mean, it lasts a little bit because the way it's set up and like the whole, samurai calming and bringing, but it's basically two moves in his fights, like 5 minutes or something, how it goes, and it's fucking brilliant. Anyway, I digress. Um, Another thing, and part of it I know is there are some things I just want to see in shows. And I do understand that, okay, characters have their own arc and their own, this is going to be really where my thing is. And I understand that Kara's thing, okay, this is a safe place now, no Imperials, we worked on that. I understand that. Um, there's just some things I would have been nice if I saw this. Now, this doesn't mean that now I have to go write a ton of fan fiction fixing everything. And because I like characters together, that doesn't mean I have to have them have sex all the time, regardless of any sex or gender or any other stuff like that. Sorry, people. Just because people work well together and they have good chemistry in terms of getting along doesn't mean they have to bone all the time. Doesn't mean that. People can still be friends. Even people who, might not be, of different genders. And even if we establish that this man and this woman are both straight and they get along, it doesn't mean that they have to have a romantic relationship. Intimacy and relationships and things like that don't always have to be about boning. Let's review what Missy and Doctor Who says about basically just evolve. Take your tiny little amino acid brain out of the gutter and actually contemplate friendship. Doesn't have to be that. If they did get a romantic thing, okay, great. I just thought that they would work. Doesn't mean I got to change what happened now either. Another digression. Another thing I'll digress out real quick. I was fine not knowing the Mandalorian's name and not seeing his face. Part of that might be because I'm a super big Twin Peaks fan. And, that whole thing, the reason why David Lynch left Twin Peaks for the vast majority of the second season, and the reason why it got all fucking wonky was because was it CBS, I think, made them reveal who killed Laura. And it was never meant to do that. They were never going to reveal who killed Laura Palmer. It wasn't even about that. So I was actually cool, never seeing his face, never knowing his name. I understand that they kind of, why they might want to do that. I understand that, the majority, that's satisfying for them in some way. And to a certain extent it is, but it kind of closed a little bit. There's a part of it, there was like a little death closure in the entire city. This thing can go 15, 20 years and they still, I don't want to say it died a little, but there is a tiny little death in there with that, with seeing his face and learning his name. But I was okay with not having that. But they did it, and I understand, the reasons and the purpose for that and everything else. I'm just saying that for me, I was fine not knowing or not seeing it. But yeah, overall, Mandalorian from the beginning through the whole thing, really solid, really well done. I'm fine. Yeah, I want to see more. Yeah, I want it to go longer. Yeah, I want more of it, or longer episodes, or a longer season, or have stuff out now and everything. Yes. But if it's going to be just that level of straight through quality from beginning to end, each of the 8 episodes, self-contained, but also leading in to and still helping the larger story arc. Really well written, really well directed, well acted, interesting story, interconnected story, individual stories. I mean, it's just a really well done show from beginning to end. in the first season. So far, great. I mean, I've already watched all the episodes except this last one at least twice. Part of that is because I was watching it at work, with the kids at work. Like, all right, it's, goal activity or whatever, and it's like, the Friday before winter break, or it's the Friday or Thursday before they have off the next day because we have an in service, and the academics are done for the time. All right, bam, Mandalorian, be quiet, sit down, just watch TV, and let's just do this last hour smooth, and then go away and leave us alone. um, so that and then I've watched a couple of them a couple of times, just on my own again because it was fun, and I just wanted to watch while I was like eating dinner or something like that. But it's got this super high rewatchability, and not only a high rewatchability, but a high rewatchability immediately after. Right, like as soon as you're done watching, I'm like, I want to watch that again. So it's really entertaining, and it's got a lot. And the last episode, directed by Taika Waititi, which is reason enough to watch it at all anyway. Has that nice thing. It was like, what's going to be awesome? This. So it has that sort of, there are some sort of nerd boy fan service sort of things. Like, be awesome? Fucking jetpacks. Be awesome? Big gun blowing stuff up. Be awesome? Using a jetpack and blowing up a TIE fighter. Be awesome? Having this guy have a dark save. So some of it was sort of, I do enjoy the things that can balance that idea of, all right, this is going to be stupid comic book big things that I like and be awesome, but it's not super douchebaggy. You know what I mean? So, and it has some of that, like the action stuff. The whole show kind of had stuff like that. The whole show had, the fight. If it was fighting, it was cool. And he wasn't like this invincible uh, warrior that was never in any danger. Like if it wasn't for his armor, he'd have been dead probably in the first episode, or as things go on. Like especially as things went on, like he got shot a ton of times, and the Beskar armor was really helping him out. So he needed that. He wouldn't have been able to do the things he did without having that armor and kind of safety net of it as well. So you see him get shot, you see him get hit, you see him get knocked around and flown through the air and blowed up and all this other stuff too. He gets messed up from it. So you still have that kind of sense of danger. You're still going to know. I'm sorry. It's on Disney Plus. It's a Star Wars thing. So you pretty much know, for the most part, things are going to work out probably pretty well for the lead character. Especially since the whole thing the whole lone wolf and cub thing taking care of the little babby Izzle. You're going to want that, like, all right, well, this is going to work out pretty well for it. Some of the other people, maybe a little expendable, but overall, probably not him. Okay. I'm okay with that. I enjoy certain things. Sorry, uh, not everything has to be super artsy, exploration of whatever stuff, and we've got to have it where I'm going to subvert your expectations for the sake of subverting your expectations, and we're going to change things up just so we can say we change things up. I'm sorry, that's, I've had jobs when they've done that, and the organizations don't exist anymore because they were doing change for the sake of change. Someone had to rationalize their shittily high paychecks, and their friends making up jobs for them as they go along that are bullshit. So they're just going, oh, I'm going to make my mark and change things, and then gone. Borders. I kind of meant, if Borders were still around, I would totally have that as a second job again. But Borders doesn't exist. The residential place I worked at doesn't exist because people wanted to keep changing shit just to change shit. And then you lose the sort of initial spirit and purpose of the thing. So I think sometimes like movie franchises will do that, TV shows will do that. We really want to shake things up and they lose the heart of the thing. So they kept the heart of it throughout the season. It had that a really solid foundation throughout. And there was some like, oh, is this going to happen? It did a good job also of ancillary characters, making you really care about those ancillary characters. Again, going back to I think it was episode 4, the Seven Samurai kind of episode, you really kind of gave a shit about, the one, pretty clearly indigenous American woman and her kid. You really kind of cared about her, especially, it's like, she was trying really hard to have this connection with Mandalorian, but she's also sitting there and sharp shooting the pans and being kind of a badass with that. But again, doesn't have to be a badass as a boy. You get that, the Arya Stark sort of thing. Everyone loves Arya Stark. Sorry, again, it's this, but I'm not saying because I'm wearing the shirt. I'm just wearing the shirt because I'm going to wear it to the gym. But I mean, my clearest sort of example of that is Arya and Sansa Stark. Sansa gets denigrated because, I mean, people just, they don't forgive her for being, um, in the book, she's like, what, 12, 14 or something like that in the books initially. I think she's something like that in the show too initially. And she was trained her whole life to basically kind of be the lady, spoiled lady queen of the house. There was always that sort of idea that since, Ned and Rob Baratheon were really good friends, that maybe Sansa might be queen someday. So she was kind of birthed with that. She was trained to trust people who would be like Cersei or something like this. Is the queen. You're supposed to trust the queen. She was raised on those knights, those stories of knights and everything. Again, sorry, dyslexia. She was raised all that. Arya was sort of like, we don't know what the fuck we're going to do with Arya. So when she goes off and is like stabbing dudes and beating the shit out of people and being a badass boy, basically, everyone's like, yeah. But Sansa, who's learning from, Peter Baelish and Cersei from all the good stuff, that not good stuff, but, the sort of the positive things that they still had to teach in terms of, this is the world that we live in and certain things you have to know and do. And then learning from all the shitty things that they do and what not to do, to kind of survive and help. People denigrate Sansa for that. It was like she didn't really realize in the beginning that she was, um, kind of betraying her family. She thought it was the right thing to do. But because she went off and was using her mind and her charm and her courtliness and this sort of more feminine way of doing things, I was like, man, fuck Sansa. No, don't fuck Sansa. Fuck you. Sansa was awesome. Arya was awesome too. But you know what? Just because someone's a strong female doesn't mean they have to be stabby stab, shooty shoot, punchy punch. And that might be somewhat hypocritical saying how much I like Kara, Gina Carano's character in Mandalorian. And she even had the sort of like stereotypical, like gave her the baby. She's like, I don't know, the baby thing. But she still kind of had a certain nurturing aspect to her as well. I mean, it wasn't just complete, I'm basically a guy with boobs. There was still a character in there. There was still a person that was trying to come out that was, more complete than some other things in a lot of ways. Where was I going? Oh, the ancillary character. So again, Kara is one that kind of care. The people with that, you didn't really care about anyone in was it episode 6, except for Mando and the Babby. But it was really satisfying when it basically turned into, they went from their double cross into, he kind of almost made this a horror movie while they were on that other ship. I mean, it was sort of like, I mean, it was almost like he was hunting them down like Michael Myers or something like that for a while. And that was kind of, and then it was like, oh, well, hey, we twisted it. Look, he didn't kill these guys, but he put the tracker on the other dude. And then, the New Republic came in and blowed them the hell up. And that was pretty satisfying. Um, but in some of the other episodes, but even, the Armorer, you saw her in 3 episodes. And she was just like this solid rock through the whole thing. It was like, this is the Mandalorian culture. This is what we're going to do. You're going to say things. I'm going to keep you on this path. I'm going to keep you on this line. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is how we do it. And then the other people wanted to get uppity with him too. It was like, no, this is what we do. This is how we do it. He's earned this. Shut up. And then you come in and you see when they finally do escape, you see this pile of Mandalorian armor, which means that group, that cell or whatever, was decimated. And she's in there just real sort of, I mean, it has that stoicism. It's like, I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay here and I'm going to reclaim what I can, how I can. And this is what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. It was very stoic. It was very brave. It was very courageous. She turns out that, and again, she defeated a firearm carrying squad of stormtroopers with basically like I'm going to go for the symbolism of it. Granted, she, like, her Mandalorian helmet kind of had that, I mean, it looked like something that would have been out of 300 or Troy. So something Spartan or Trojan, something Greek. So again, you kind of have, and I'm going to get symbolist with this. I can't believe I went for almost 50 minutes without getting super symbolic about things, because it is kind of what I do a lot. So you have that idea just with that helmet alone. So if you've watched 300, if you've watched Troy, um, as way off base as those might have been historically or literarily. Now, side note, I have to say literature and literally because I can't say it the American way. It just goes literature, literary. See, literary. So I have to say literally if I just want to say a goddamn sentence. So, literaturally, for, from the Iliad or, the actual history of Thermopylae. But having that helmet sort of gives you that feel of that connection with the classics. When we say classical history or literature, we're basically referring, in 20th, 21st century, Western thought, we're talking about Greco-Roman. Anything before, the sort of rise of Greece, of the main sort of power is considered ancient. So the Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Persians kind of cross from ancient into classical. You have that ancient, even Indian and Chinese influence and things like that. But when we say classical in the West, we're referring to Greece and Rome. So you have that, and for some reason that's seen as like really high point of our Western culture and civilization. Now, let's not forget that the Romans stole a ton of shit from the Greeks, who stole a ton of shit from, like, the Egyptians, and even like the Persians and Babylonians and stuff like that. So Greek culture was an amalgam of these other things that they stole as well. So let's not pretend that the Greeks created a whole lot of shit and everything. They didn't. They borrowed, and they might have adapted, and maybe were a little different at writing things down, and they made things a little bit more material than some of the other stuff. Like the Egyptian culture would have been much more symbolist than the Greeks were, and the Romans even less so from that. I read one thing like 2 days ago They were talking about if you take the Greek gods and the Roman gods, the Roman gods are basically the Greek gods, but a much more material version of the more sort of spiritual, symbolic Greek gods, who are still more material, matter, reductionist versions of then, say, like even the Egyptians. So you have you need Athena and Diana and a couple other things in order just to equal just Isis. You know, um, you know, Hermes and everything, has that tying with Thoth and everything, but still doesn't have the same symbolist qualities that might be there. Anyway, so you have, the armorer who's keeping the Mandalorian all the Mandalorians in there, but especially the main one we care about, on the straight and narrow path of their code. Has that more classical feel to their armor. And then what is she using? She doesn't use a blaster when she beats up the stormtroopers, like I said earlier. She's got like a hammer, I think like tongs or something like that. So something to beat and then something to grab, or something that's at least hooked. And then when they come and see her, she's kneeling with them crossed. I'm sorry. I see something to beat, something to hook, and someone with their arms crossed with a clearly classical bent to it. That's the crook and the flail. That's like pharaonic. So this person, what does she she do? She beats the shit out of a whole squad without ever picking up a blaster or any projectile thing anyway. She even dumps one guy into her cauldron, basically. So now we're starting to get like Cauldron of Luke, Holy Grail kind of stuff going in there too. And what does that thing do? It's almost alchemy at that point in time as well, because you have even the Beskar, even in its like purest thing that he found in that pure Beskar, you even have that, but then you might have that high level thing, but then she's forming it into something as well, something that's symbolic, something that's meaningful, but it's also protective. That armor is symbolic to their culture and to the individual person, but it has a very real purpose as well, in terms of protection, in terms of identification, and all that. But I mean, so it has all this stuff. So they're even wrapping in a lot of literary symbolism and sort of higher level, uh, 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 visual things and tie-ins as well. Making it like really building in that idea of this being a mythology. As much as, I mean, if you watch the prequel trilogy, I'm sorry, the prequel trilogy is garbage. It's so bad. As much as, I mean, I'm sorry, any director, any writer and director who can make Natalie Portman be that bad of an actress is really saying something, because she's an amazing actress. But George Lucas' dialogue in the prequels was garbage. It was awful. The characterizations were terrible. I'm sorry, David Lynch. Like, the one thing I disagree with you with is the idea that George Lucas should have written and directed anything else other than Star Wars. I say Star Wars, meaning technically Episode 4, and I'm not using A New Hope, because originally it wasn't fucking called A New Hope. It was called Star Wars. And originally, Han didn't shoot first. Han shot only. There wasn't a second shot. Greedo never got off a shot. It was only Han who shot the one time. That was it. Anyway. So, the dialogue in the prequels is just fuck awful, just terrible. Attack of the Clones, 80% of Obi-Wan's lines were all "my young apprentice, my young Padawan, my very young apprentice, my very." I mean, he says it 50 times. If you were to take a drink of even a shot of beer every time he says something like that, you'd be dead by the end of the movie, because that's how many goddamn times he says it. You have this whole thing where he's on Camino and he's like, Wait, what the fuck's going on? You have an army? You have clones? You have this? You have everything? Oh yeah, but I totally knew about that and thank you. And none of the Camino and Big Q-tip people were like, oh, okay, yeah, this is cool. Clearly you knew what was going on and we're fine with just showing you everything. Makes no goddamn sense. And how do you spend all of Phantom Menace and bits and pieces of Attack of the Clones making Padme kind of a badass and a very, sort of tough female character, and then you have her be this teenage melodramatic CW character for parts of Attack of the Clones, and then she's this like flitty, whiny Ophelia who just gives up on life at the end of Revenge of the Sith when she has babbies to take care of. What the fuck are you doing? But his point originally, like a lot of this stuff, had to do with all that Joseph Campbell thing. And Joseph Campbell's thing was, that power of myth. There's like one real story that has a through line anywhere in the world. Western, Eastern, different indigenous things. These things is just through line sort of thing. He's tapping in to the sort of Jungian, not Jungian, Jungian archetypes and everything like that. So now it's with some of the stuff in The Mandalorian, you're bringing that back. Clone Wars had bits and pieces of it. Rebels had little bits and pieces of it. I think the sequel trilogy, was trying to reignite that sort of archetypal journey thing. Some a little successfully, little not successfully. That I do like Last Jedi, but the whole thing on the Monte Carlo planet was just kind of like this fucking weird hot mess of stuff. It could have been done way differently. Um, but I think there's a lot of stuff in this Mandalorian show that is reigniting that sort of mythos, archetypal sort of fire back in. And I think really the armorer, especially in this last finale episode with the crossed hammer and tongue, and you can say, well, communists. And you think, which doesn't make, and I'm sure someone will probably bring in some sort of communist bullshit, social bullshit, which is clearly not what this would be. Um, sorry, it was nothing to do with finances and industry. What and you could say, oh well, she was forging stuff, so it's clearly industry. No, this isn't fucking socialism. It's fucking communism. It's not fucking capitalism. No, yes, you can probably bring in all sorts of socioeconomic stuff. And was it Carl Weathers' character? Is clearly this capitalist and all this other stuff. But then again, he's helping him at the end too. It might have been a certain self-interest thing with that, but he's kind of, Mandalorian is doing a lot of stuff for money. But then you can say, oh, he found something better. Yeah, he found something better. He found some higher calling, which wasn't uh, um, redistribution of wealth and workers stuff and industrial things, and still treating people like economic commodities. That wasn't what was going on. You got to look past that. It was this reigniting. We have we're going to go Greek and Roman. We have Hephaestus, Vulcan. You have the whole uh, alchemy process. All these magic systems and stuff like that want to talk about alchemy and turning base. It wasn't turning base metals into gold. It was taking the base sort of structure of who you are and your initial thing that is brought into this world of sort of suffering and really shitty conditioning, and then purifying yourself through these stages of things and making yourself better and a higher. I'm really itchy. Making yourself a higher sort of being and a higher purpose and everything with that too. So say whatever socioeconomic bullshit you want. I don't care. This is way beyond that. this is again, I think, really reinforcing and re-putting and almost reincarnating, having a little renaissance of that initial archetypal sort of alchemal, I almost want to say magic system back into the thing. Because what are Jedi? What are Jedi? They're samurai Taoists. I mean, they really should be that. And the whole point is they got inured of the material so much. They got so wrapped up in the politics. They got so wrapped up in their own hubris, in their own bullshit, in their own diseased, um, panicked, fear-based teachings of one narrow view of the Force. Now, I'm not saying that, okay, everyone needs to learn the dark side and just be out for themselves and hurt each other. But you know what? That's a very narrow view of another side of the Force. Again, I think one of the things that Last Jedi, I think, was talking about a lot is that, and I thought that Darth Sidious made a point in the little Cirque du Soleil water light being thing with Anakin is the Jedi and the Sith are alike in a lot of ways because they both have this tiny, narrow scope of what they view of the Force. And you can extend the Force and basically mean the universe or even God. And if all you say is it has to be like this, and or else you're wrong, and that's it, and it has to be this, this is why the Jedi failed. This is why the Jedi fell. This is why the Jedi got blinded to all this other stuff, because these people were enforcing all these things in this other little narrow view, and they were missing the damn point too. That's why the gray Jedi were probably the ones that you really wanted to kind of be like, I think that's the one that might got it. So, um, so it has that, these people with that have this potential got so focused on these narrow things that they couldn't exist anymore. The Sith self-destructed, the Jedi self-destructed. Um, but again, we're almost talking about balancing out, a higher level sort of yin and yang, masculine, feminine. The Sith would be the more masculine, enforcing all this stuff. But again, you enforce everything like this, and what happens? It's going to break. And the Jedi kind of got more passive. It was like, well, it's got to be like this. But then you get that sort of like fear-based panic during virtue angel card sort of stuff of Thomas Kincaid bullshit. And what happens is that gets very stiff and narrow too. And that stiff and narrow view, like a stick that's been on the ground for a year, breaks. And I think sometimes people get like that even with, whatever sort of fandoms or anything like that too. So I think Mandalorian did a good job getting back into having that archetype, which would again be tapping into like subconscious sort of stuff and those symbols. That him getting his sort of clan of his own badge is symbolic as well. Again, the special fancy metal that gets purified and used not only as an identity but also as protection, as this almost like a katana, this spiritual thing that they have, now has a symbol for him and the babby. But that has to get forged. That has to get created. That has to get forged and created by his experience, by his changing from what he was to what he became even just within the context of the show. His experiences before the show started would have informed a lot of who he is, but he's taking some of that stuff out and learning how to be, that higher level individual, that higher level person. And he's doing it through his actions, through his interactions with other people, through his interactions with now, this innocence, this, and that it's almost the Babby Yizzle is almost sort of something that it seems like this little child Babby that can't even talk. So it doesn't have that conditioned thing of the thoughts being narrowed in terms of language, because language does place strictures on thought. So it doesn't have that. It's almost like this pure innocence. But since it's 50 years old, I mean that would be, I mean, it's probably older than the Mandalorian. So it has this other, older kind of quality too. Plus it's a force wielder, but it's a force wielder in a very pure way. It has protection, it has healing, but hey, it has protection in terms of, I'm raising that mudhorn thing so it doesn't crush you. I'm stopping this ball of fire so it doesn't kill us all. But it also has protection, and he full on started force choking Kara when they were just arm wrestling because he didn't understand that they were just playing. They weren't seriously harming each other or anything. So, but it's not quite perfectly middle of the road, but it's almost sort of like, no yang but stick to yin. You still have to know that shadow side. You still have to accept the fact that you as an individual are capable of probably some fucked up shit. But you're still able to go in and be pure and more helpful and sticking to that thing that's going to be that higher consciousness sort of thing. So he kind of represents that. And now the Mandalorian, after having all this trauma and going through all this training and being this sort of lone thing, is now having to care for this, basically symbol of, you know, I don't want to say like like a Buddha sort of thing, like some sort of perfected being. It's like this innocence and this power together in one thing. And I think, I mean, other than the fact that they did a good job with going with the practical effects on the puppet as opposed to CG, thank you. Practical effects will always be better than CG. Apart from that, I think part of the reason that it's the phenomena it is with the wee babby is, I'm sorry, I think it taps into a certain amount of symbolism with that. And now he's protecting this. Now he's caring for this. Now it's like this precious thing that he's acting in behalf of. And he gets the new armor, and he's evolving in terms of his sort of stuff. I think the armor and then the jetpack and all these other things are these physical representations of the way he's evolving. And so again, it has this alchemical process to it as a show, as a character, that you're kind of coming along with them as well. So not only in terms of just the show, in terms of a through line, through all 8 episodes, not only having each episode individually, a little less with episode 7 because it did kind of have a cliffhanger, but as a two-parter, which makes sense at the end of a season. It has, each episode is watchable in and of itself. It's good in terms of its all their places within the larger structure of the show. It's funny. There's a lot of cool badass stuff. And there's some shades of gray with things and everything, so it's not just pure, good and evil sort of thing. But there's clearly bad guys and there's clearly sort of good guys, but there are some shades of gray in it too, so everyone kind of gets a little of something. There's a lot of opportunities in things behind the scenes and on screen to be inclusive in a lot of ways. So I mean, it really, really had a lot of completeness of a show. And if you just wanted it in terms of, I like Star Wars, I like action stuff, Baby Yoda is adorable, Mandalorians are badass, you know, Gina Carano's badass. Hey, look, it's Apollo Creed, or possibly Dylan if you're in more Predator than Rocky, which is fine. Uh, or possibly it's actual Carl Weathers and babe, you got a stew going, which where however you want to look at it. So you know that's great. You can do that too. But I mean, if you really look into it, it's got this other symbolist, almost literary through line and things that pop up in it as well. And it doesn't just say, "Hey, look, I'm being artistic and awesome. Here's a symbol." I mean, it has those moments, but the way they're framed, the way that it's put into it, it's still like you can get either side out of it. So yeah, just seeing the armor on her knees with the crossed tools sort of thing, you know, it's like, is she just going to up and sacrifice herself? Is she going to fight? Either way, that seems sort of badass. And then you have it where she does fight and beat the crap out of everyone. It's like, if you just want to see it as that, it's a great scene. It's a cool scene. But then taking in all the other little bits in with it too, it starts getting a little interesting. And actually analyzing his journey through the 8 episodes starts taking on this other interesting thing as well. So Mandalorian on Disney Plus, well fucking done. Use probably more colorful language in this than I originally meant to, but you know what? I don't really care. I'll put a little thing in there in the show notes or whatever. Show notes, video notes. Is this a show? I don't know. Uh, so yeah, I think I'm tapped out here at the minute. I'm pushing, hour 11. So thank you for watching. Thank you for sitting through all that. If you did, or even if you skipped through, thank you for skipping through. Even if you turned it off and you're not even listening to this right now, thank you for at least boosting a view. So I'm John. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Share if you like. And I'll be talking about other stuff pretty soon. I also want to uh, get off my butt and get some more of those Xingyi videos out. I have virtually all of the 5 element fists for the Xingyi to do. I only did the splitting. I got to do all the other ones. I think I filmed the drilling. I have to look. I don't know. So I'll be doing more of that too. And I have some other stuff I want to be getting into, including some of my experiences from sensory deprivation floats. And then I got a couple other just stupid rants to go off of as well, including how we're sort of obsessed with bad people. Anyway, so thanks for watching. Ciao.